Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. Today is going to be a slightly different video and I'm going to be showing you my portfolio for uni. So if you don't know, I do creative advertising and I have just handed in my last bit of work for the year, which means that I have finished first year, and a few of you asked me to share my portfolio that I've just submitted, so that's what I'm going to be doing in this video. But before we get into it, I just want to quickly say, obviously my work is not the best. I'm not saying it is the best. It's pretty like average and it's not necessarily going to be a reflection of the work you might do if you do creative advertising at a different uni. Obviously it varies, and also I'd say we've done like 50 projects this year or something similar, and there was only 10 to be included in this submission, so it's obviously not a full reflection of the work that we've done. And as it goes, half of the pieces I had to submit this time were my worst pieces, so yeah, take everything with a pinch of salt, but I thought I would just show you the stuff that I did and what I've just submitted. Also, I don't get results back until I think it's in like 3 weeks, so I might do a video to let you know, so then it means a bit more, because if I end up getting a really bad mark you probably don't want to do whatever I've done. But anyway, I've got my laptop here and I'm just going to show you the stuff that I've submitted. So obviously, because everything's been done online now, we've had to do all of our submission online. So one was just the final pieces and the other one was all the support work. I'm probably just going to show you the final pieces because otherwise this will be a very long video, because I think my support work document was like 50 pages and I'm sure you don't all need to see every little stage of the process. So I'm just going to show you my main pieces and how they came out. So this is what I used as my title page. It just has my name, my student number, and it just says Creative Advertising Year 1. And then I had a little illustration that I used for a different brief that wasn't included, but I just thought it made it a little bit more personal. I don't think, I don't know, there's different opinions about this. I think obviously make your portfolio look as nice as you can. However, if you're on a very tight time scale, I wouldn't worry about making it super pretty, because at the end of the day you're being marked on your work, not how nice your portfolio looks. But obviously when it comes to taking it into industry, you're going to want it to look nice, but mine does not look particularly like swish and put together, because if we're being honest, I did this in about 3 days. So yeah, I then just broke it down by module, but I'm not going to show you all the details because I don't want to get sued by uni. I don't think that's a thing, but you never know. So anyways, first brief in this is called insects, and we basically had to try and make people want to eat insects because it's good for the planet and there's a food shortage. And I think an important thing to note with creative advertising is, unlike unlike courses like graphics or illustration where it is very focused on your final outcome and it looking very nice, with creative advertising, or at least at Lincoln, the main idea is that you need to have a good idea behind it. It doesn't matter if you make something look nice if it's not done properly, if that makes sense. Like, if you have a really bad idea, it's not going to come across well even if it looks nice. So most of these don't particularly look nice graphically, however they get the point across, and that's the main point. Obviously as it comes to second and third year we will focus more on making things look nice, but for first year it is literally just focused on trying to get you to make good ideas. So yeah, so as I say, first one was insects. For each project we had to do a page just sort of summing up what the brief was and how we approached it. I will probably skip that and just give you my own little overview. So the final bits that I submitted as my final pieces was this. So as I say, it was insects. You had to make people want to eat them. Me and my partner decided that the best way to do this was to make them into like a luxury item. So how caviar is actually really gross and it's fish eggs, but people think it's posh, like doing that but with like crickets or something. So we made some fancy looking packaging and also like mocked up some celebrity endorsements for it. Also, I think it's worth noting that the majority of the projects that we do are group or like paired projects, so you rarely work by yourself. So the majority of these ones, actually I think all of them, but I'll tell you as I go along, have been with other people. So you never really work by yourself, which I think is quite nice, but obviously it depends how well you get on with certain people. But yeah, this next brief is called CA Saves the World, and for this one it was about heart health, because there was a statistic that 4 in 5 adults in England have a higher heart age than their actual age, which means obviously you're more unhealthy than you should be basically. So we had to find a way of approaching this to make people more aware of their heart health and to actually do something about it. So this one was done as a group of 4, and our idea was to make it an interactive thing, a bit like Never Have I Ever. So it'll be like a pop-up ad on Instagram that would be like, never have I ever eaten McDonald's 3 times in a day, and once you've like answered some of the questions, it gives you your result of how likely you are to develop heart disease, we just thought this was a good way to do it, because if it's interactive, especially on Instagram, if you see one of them ads where it's like one that you want to click on, obviously you're going to click on it because that's the main point of it, and you're more likely to complete it to then get that information. The next brief was called Nudge, and this one was about getting parents to read to their children every day, because a lot of parents don't do that, and it's been proven that if you do read to your child every day, it really helps them when they go to school and with their English in general. So our idea was to make parents aware of how important reading is by basically guilt tripping them, and this is actually something that advertisers do sometimes. So yeah, we approached it by using guilt and basically saying you wouldn't send your child to bed without brushing their teeth, so why are you sending them to bed without reading to them? And we kind of followed that example with a lot of different ones, but as I say, we could only submit one final piece, so we just chose the brushing your teeth example for this one. But without meaning to, we used something I think that's called like a knowledge gap. So basically by insinuating you wouldn't send your child to bed without brushing their teeth, which is almost a given that you wouldn't do, and comparing it to the reading, it makes the reader rethink what their actions are and the consequences, if that makes sense. So we didn't mean to do that, but apparently that's a good thing to do, so yeah. Also, the graphics for this is so creepy. I did it last night because we just had like the mock-ups on paper that looked really messy, so I just quickly chucked that together. And I'm aware this is a very scary looking child, but if you want it to look better, maybe don't do it at the last minute like I did. Next one was called Sharks, and for this one we had to change people's perceptions of sharks, because they're actually quite endangered animals and they're often poached, so we needed to find a way to make people not want to kill sharks basically. So for this one we found out that sharks actually have a big impact on the ecosystem, and if we lost sharks it would significantly impact like under the sea aquatic ecosystems sort of thing. So in order to make people care more about sharks, we focused on what they would lose if we didn't have sharks. So things like scallops you wouldn't be able to get if sharks didn't exist, because it would affect the ecosystem and there would be a new predator that would eat them, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a long process, but hopefully you get what I mean. Our idea was to put these little stickers on things that would be impacted by sharks. So as I say, things like scallops, so when you went to buy them at the supermarket there would be a sticker on it that says like no sharks, no scallops, just to kind of raise awareness that sharks are important, and just to help kind of change the perception that sharks are bad, because even though people may be scared of them, they might not want them dead if they know that they're helpful, if that makes sense. The next one is 200 Degrees, and this is actually a coffee chain that is around the UK, and it was meant to be a live brief where we go and actually present it to them at the end, but obviously because of you know what in the world, we weren't able to do that because everything got moved online, but the brief still stands, so I will talk you through it. So what we had to do was try and get more people to use the online rewards app. So like how at, trying to think of an example, say like Boots, you have like your advantage cards and you get points. They have a version where you collect points to get money off of your orders in the future, but lots of people either weren't aware of it or weren't using it. So our idea was, we found a lot of students in particular use the cafe for studying, so they're there for a long period of time. So our idea was to kind of reward you for staying longer. So once you go in the shop and buy your first drink and scan the app, it then sort of counts down, so after 2 hours you will get a free drink. And yeah, it just encourages people to stay longer, and the likelihood is if you're there for more than 2 hours you're going to buy another drink anyway, so you're not really losing money by giving them a free drink quite often. We don't really think too deeply when we are making the like visual bits, we just sort of follow our instincts, I guess. So I'm not saying if you look at this and you're a graphic designer you probably think that looks awful, and it probably does, but as you can see it gets the point across, which as I say is the main point of the course at the minute. So yeah. The next one was called Love Letters. This was one I can't say I was particularly fond of because this was more of a writing brief. So in terms of advertising jobs, you can either be a copywriter or like an art director or a creative director. So copywriters focus on the text and type, whereas art directors focus on making the actual final product look nice, and a creative director is in charge of the general idea that you want to use. So yeah, as I say, this was more of a kind of copywriter brief, which wasn't something I loved, but anyway. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see this to actually read it, but I will put it up anyway. So we had to write a love letter to a brand and a hate letter. So you had to pick a brand. I chose Baby Bell, and basically write as if you're in love with them and then write as if you hated them. And yeah, that's pretty much the brief. And then we had to add some visuals. So for the hate one, I used Cathedral City as like a border to it, because I said how Baby Bell basically doesn't taste like actual cheese, so Cathedral City is better. So I just used that as my border, and on the other one I just put in some pretty ugly looking love hearts to emphasise my love to them. But yeah, as I say, I'm not going to like read through the whole thing or anything, but if you can zoom in, feel free. So the next brief was called Tweak, and this was actually my favourite brief that I think we did all year, I'd say, and this was a lot more art direction focused. So basically we had a load of old adverts to pick from that were really badly made and just look really gross. I will insert the old advert that I had to recreate first so you can see the improvement, hopefully. So yeah, I picked this old Asda advert and had to still keep it as it was, so it still had to portray the same message, but I had to make it look nicer. So for me, the issue was it was so busy and cluttered, and there were just things like cutting each other off and overlapping, but not in a good way. So I just wanted to refine it a lot, and it's called Tweak because you basically want to change lots of little things, very minor changes that have a big impact. So in my support work there's about 20 different versions of this final design that's slightly different, but this is the one that I went for. I'm hoping you agree that this was an improvement to the old one, because if not, I'm just going to reevaluate my life. But yeah, so I kept the same message as I say, which was switch and save, and I tried to make a little tower of all the products. I am no good with Photoshop and literally just pasted them on top of each other, and then the banana slightly overlaps the border to bring your eye forward, and yeah, things like that. It's just sort of playing around with type and positioning to make it how you like it. I think this looks quite nice. I'm pretty pleased with it. As I say, it's my favourite one that I've made that actually looks good, whereas a lot of our other work doesn't really look good. I feel like this one actually kind of looks alright, so yeah. The next brief was called BBC, another one I didn't particularly enjoy, but by the end of it, it wasn't too bad. We basically had to find an issue off of BBC that was relevant and find a way to kind of tackle the issue. And I think the reason I didn't like it is because it was such a broad brief. I kind of like the ones where it's very, here's your issue, just solve this. We kind of had to make our own issue, if that makes sense. The one that we chose was focused around men and mental health, in the fact that a lot of men are too afraid to speak out about mental health issues because they feel like it emasculates them or makes them look weak. And we decided to pair this with sports players and the app Headspace. So basically, sports players would be more open about their mental health struggles and would collaborate with Headspace to kind of make their own meditation exercises or like podcast episodes where they speak through their own struggles, in the hopes that by having someone who a lot of men may look up to who's a sports player, it will encourage other men to speak out about their own problems. So for the graphics for this one, I'm not sure if it would legally be allowed. It definitely wouldn't, but it's fine for our briefs. I took an original Headspace advert and just changed the text on it to say like sports takeover, Danny Rose, mindfulness on and off the pitch. So yeah, I didn't do any of the graphics on this one. I'm not taking credit for it. I literally changed the text, but that way it's in keeping with Headspace's other work. But yeah, I'm not taking credit for it. Please don't sue me. Next, we have one called Unwanted, another one I did not like. So for this one, we had to pick something that people don't like and make people want it. So for an example, I don't know, like body odour or like something that, yeah, like no one finds desirable basically. So we chose bread crusts because like even if some people don't hate a bread crust and will eat it, no one chooses a bread crust really, or as far as I know, and like kids don't really like them and cut them off and stuff. So our way of making them desirable was to make them seem exclusive, because on a normal loaf of bread you only have 2 crusts, as in like the end pieces. So when you think about that, it's like an exclusive part of the bread. So our idea was to repackage the ends of the bread as exclusive pieces and just have like a loaf that was made up of ends of bread. I don't really know how that would practically work, but that was the idea we went for, and it would still be a loaf in a sense, but just made up of all the end pieces. Okay, so this is the final piece for my portfolio, and this one was called Greetings. This was another one that I really liked doing, and we basically had to come up with our own card company and like design our own cards for it, but we had to try and do it in a way to make something that didn't already exist. So we created a brand that was called Nora's Ark, which is kind of a knockoff of Noah's Ark, and our animals, unlike Noah's, was all the kind of not undesirable but weird animals. So we had things like pigeons, hedgehogs, sheep, ladybirds, stuff like that, and we used a lot of puns in it, as you can see. Hopefully I'll do more close-ups of the cards over here. And along with that, we wanted to have an extra element to it, so it would have like a pop-up section. So when you opened the card, you would have a pop-up like creation of the animal. So say you had the ladybird card, you would get a pop-up ladybird in it that obviously lies flat in the card, and then when you open it, it pops out. And that was our idea. I didn't know the physics behind it, but you don't need to. I could demonstrate the idea with my weird drawing of it, and that was good enough. And yeah, we had 5 different designs for this one, all with a similar theme but different, if that makes sense. But yeah, that is literally everything that I submitted for my portfolio. We had one back in January, so we had different pieces submitted then, which is obviously why we didn't have to submit every single piece from this year. But as I say, I was a bit, not annoyed, but it was just the way it went that a lot of the pieces I had to submit were the ones that I didn't feel I did as well on, or I didn't enjoy. But never mind, it is what it is. It is only first year, and even though I want to do well, it's not the end of the world if I don't. But hopefully this video was helpful if you're either looking at doing creative advertising, or maybe you already do it and needed some ideas on how to do your portfolio. As I say, I wouldn't necessarily follow how I presented it because I didn't put too much effort into the presentation of it. But yeah, hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up down below and subscribe because it really helps me out. As I say, I should get my results in the next few weeks, so I'll probably do a video sharing that with you guys if any of you are nosy like I am. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you very soon with another one.